In person, my brother was a good deal like his music, vibrant, dynamic, and honest, and, if I may, charming. He was full of life and lived a full day. Although most of it was devoted to the piano and his music, it was a continual source of amazement to me that he found time to engage in so many other activities. He was a fine painter, a good golfer, a discerning and courageous art collector, an excellent photographer, a wonderful dancer, whether at a ballroom or taking a moment out of his show rehearsal to break into a tap dance. And socially, he was one of the most sought-after young men in New York, or whatever city he happened to be in. George moved fast, lived fast, studied hard, and learned fast.
From 1917, when he began his career as a composer, to 1937, when his life was ended by a brain tumor, George Gershwin was a musical meteor. Vital, energetic, original, confident, celebrated, and possibly America's most important contribution to music. But what kind of a man was he? In the latter part of the last century, there were many Russian Jewish families living on the east side of New York, among them the Gershwins. These were ordinary, non-artistic working people. Like most of their neighbors, they just managed to keep their heads above water, but they were bright, intelligent people. In December of 1896, the Gershwins gave birth to a son named Israel, and then on September 26 of 1898, a second boy named Jakob. A few years later, they decided to anglicize their names, from Gershwitz to Gershwin. Israel became Ira, and Jakob became George. Ira was the quiet, studious brother. George was the roughneck of the family. He liked playing in the streets, fighting, roller skating, and hockey. Then, in his 11th year, he happened to hear someone on the piano playing Dvorak's Humoresque. He stopped and listened and discovered music. He then became dedicated to it. And as Ira Gershwin recalls, it was a dedication even his family were unaware of.
It was about 50 years ago when a piano was hoisted through the window into the front room of our flat on 2nd Avenue on the Lower East Side of New York City. My parents had in mind that I, as the oldest child, was shortly to start taking lessons. But the upright had scarcely been put into place when George, he was then 11 or 12, twirled the stool down to size, sat, lifted the keyboard cover, and played an accomplished version of a then popular song. Naturally, we were all startled at this hitherto undisclosed talent of his. How? When? We wanted to know. He made it sound very simple. Whenever he had the chance, he'd been fooling around and experimenting on a player piano at the home of a schoolmate around the corner. So, with little discussion, and certainly no argument from me, it was decided that the lesson taker would be George. George quickly learned to read music and soon was playing the Assembly March at school. Later, he performed the same function at the High School of Commerce. But he remained there only one term. Broadway and its songs fascinated him far more than a future of double entry. After an audition at Jerome H. Remick and Company, where he was asked to play not only some of the house songs, but to transpose them then and there, he was hired that very day as one of the staff at $15 a week. And he was only 15 years old, undoubtedly the youngest pianist ever to join a professional department in the popular song business. At 17, he had his first song published, and at 20, he was the composer of La La Lucille, his first Broadway show, and also of his first big song hit, Swanee.
George Gershwin was 21 when he wrote Swanee, and he couldn't possibly have given himself a more wonderful birthday present than that song. It was the key to the door of success, and the door was to remain wide open to him for the rest of his life. Within a year, Swanee sold more than 1 million copies in sheet music. It was his first song hit, and strangely enough, it was to be the most popular of all his songs. Young as he was, Gershwin by this time had been in the music business 6 years, and he had been experimenting with composition for most of that time. His first published instrumental piece was a piano rag issued by Remix in 1917, at about the time that Gershwin decided to give up piano pounding for that company. The music was a typical rag of that period, and he called it Rialto Riffles. Gershwin was to meet thousands of show business personalities during those noisy years as a piano pounder, and a few of them were to become lifetime friends. One of them was Alfred Newman, who eventually became the most outstanding of Hollywood music directors.
I first